So, Anne, thank you for joining us today for your meeting. You are in the chair. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you.
Hi.
I will start by, have people actually signed on? Have I an audience?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Can't hear me.
Right. Well, before I start, if I could ask Pat to take note of the voters and the attenders, because if I'm taking notes and sharing, I'm bound to miss something.
I'll take the notes down, don't worry.
You will. Brilliant. Yes. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I give a welcome to all our members and supporters. We're very glad to have your support. And I also welcome our new youth representative, Talia Kamara. I expect an absentia because she probably is in school. She is a welcome link, of course, to today's youth. And I welcome the team on the committee and our guest speakers, Dawn Grocott, who is the Senior Countryside and Rights of Way Officer for Herts County Council, and Stephen Whiting, who is the Enforcement Officer for Herts County Council for the Countryside and Rights of Way. Right, have we any apologies?
I have Simon Ray.
Yes.
Nigel Clark.
Yes,
John
I've got
Partridge.
it. Yes.
Kira Hearn and Joe Kay.
Right. Minutes of the last meeting, which the last AGM, which was on the 29th of July 2020, also a Zoom meeting. Has anyone any objections to what was contained in that?
No, they're fine.
No, okay. Well, in that case, I will sign them as correct. Okay. 10/5/20. Right. Now, any matters arising from them? No?
No.
Well, in that case, I will proceed with my chairman's report. 2020 has been a year when the Greenbelt continues to be threatened by development, driven by the relentless pressure of housing demand and the search for profit by developers, circling like piranhas around the Greenbelt. We have the same concerns, of course, as we had last year: Aldenham Reservoir, Woodcock Hill and Alum Lane Fields. It's very difficult sometimes not to feel like as though you're in a besieged castle with the attackers camped all around. It has also been a year of loss. Our former wonderful chairman, Avril Chick, died. And also our friend, committee member and webmaster, Patrick O'Donnell. Both are greatly missed and remembered with affection. But we have gained in the appointment of Talia Kamara as our youth representative. And as I said before, a much needed link with young people. Negotiations continue over Aldenham Reservoir, and this has our full approval. Keep talking, Liberty Lake Leisure and Herts Borough Council, and please arrive at an outcome that preserves the res as a natural, beautiful green area for local people to use for recreation, exercise and pleasure, and as a wildlife habitat. We really need our green spaces for mental and physical health. The necessary relocation of Shopwick Surgery, once operated single-handedly from Shopwick by Dr. Wynne Everett in simpler times, has caused huge local anxiety.
Do we want it a bit louder?
Nobody wants the fields off Alum Lane replaced by a surgery, pharmacy, and care home in rather tactless proximity to the cemetery, with 250 houses to pay for them. Other sites are fortunately available, one being the area by the old fisheries on Watford Road, which we, of course, would support. The solar panel plant on Slade and Hillside Farms would lose us another 300 acres of greenbelt.
I've done that.
We believe solar panels could be placed on buildings to provide the green energy to which we must switch to avoid disastrous climate change. We are opposing the solar plant on the grounds that it would sacrifice too much farmland for uncertain returns. The deregistration of Woodcock Hill as a village green would be a mockery of the years of devoted effort taken to have it designated as a village green and safeguarded for the community. Again, we must save our green spaces. The Greenbelt Society fully supports the Woodcock Hill Village Green Society in its opposition to the Taylor-Wimpey proposals, which would appear to be preparing the way for future house building there. Preservation of listed buildings continues to concern us. We flagged up the dilapidated state of the Hollybush Inn and the old schoolhouse in Theobald Street. The Hollybush has now been restored for use as a day nursery, and we hope the schoolhouse will also be treated kindly. We remember the sad loss of the timbered cottage on the station roundabout Shenley Road and the old cottages in Elstree High Street only too well. Once gone, lost forever. The preservation of trees is one of our major issues, and we contact our TPO, Mark Pigden, when tree felling is reported. The very names of Elstree and Borehamwood indicate the originally sylvan character of the area. Trees are essential for air quality and as natural habitats. Finally, the plan for a new film studio in Rowley Lane has just been detonated. Another 100 acres of greenbelt will be engulfed. But on the other hand, this is historically a film town, and it would bring employment and prosperity to Borehamwood and indeed to the United Kingdom, as the arts contribute a lot to the national GDP. Could this be the exceptional circumstances required for use of this green belt? The debate continues. I end with thanks to our guest speakers, Dawn Grocott and Stephen Whiting, the committee who've bravely Zoomed along with me, and Clive, Pat and Helen who've put in such hard work to get the newsletter printed and the AGM ready. We're very grateful to Marjorie Davis for auditing the annual accounts. We shall keep on fighting to keep our countryside green and pleasant, William Blake, rather than the concrete and tarmac wasteland of uncontrolled development. We must share the planet with the rest of the flora and fauna, not grab it all for ourselves. We see that butterflies and hedgehogs are endangered. If we continue to wreck the ecosystem, it will eventually be Homo sapiens, mankind. That is the end, on that apocalyptic note, the end of my report. Can I ask for the Treasurer's report, please?
Yes, certainly. I don't know whether it's possible for my accounts to go up as a separate screen. I've just emailed just that sheet to you, Clive. I don't know if that's possible or if it's just a bit too short notice. Otherwise, I think it's going to be too small on the Zoom screen like this.
Well, can you read it out, Helen? So
Yeah.
the
Here,
basic facts of
yeah,
it.
and see if
Helen, I'll send it round.
Oh, okay. So the hello everyone. I'm the treasurer of the Greenbelt Society. So I'd like again to thank Marjorie, who has audited our accounts again this year. Thank you very much. That was a great help to us to know that we can rely on Marjorie for that. We're in a satisfactory position at the Greenbelt Society. We have a total of £5,176 across 2 bank accounts, the community bank account and the business premium account. To be honest, there's 3,000 in one, 2,000 in the other. We've increased our bank balance by about £280 this year. The bank interest is negligible, 93p in the year, which is pretty dreadful, but higher rates just aren't available on any free business bank accounts at the moment. The reason for the split of the 2 bank accounts obviously was one was more of an investment account, but unfortunately that's not to be at the moment. But we're okay. The income for 2020 amounted to £741, and that came from membership fees. Let's not forget the 93p. Standing orders of £45, which are the same people that have obviously set up standing orders and are going through every year. We've managed to get the bank transfers up to £185, so quite a number of those now, which is good, and cheques of £510. So we're still getting quite a lot of cheque payments through, but all good. No cash this year, which was probably due to COVID. So we're up £57 income from last year. So the number of members has been falling, although maybe it doesn't show that in the income, because some people are generous and do donate more than the £5 per person or household. But as the number of members has been falling over the last few years, the committee did agree to make the membership fee free of charge, with a suggested donation of £5.
Thank you.
So the aim of this was that new members would be encouraged to join us with no financial commitment. So that means anybody who would like to join, who is interested to receive our updates and the threats that we're facing in the Greenbelt land and the historical buildings in our area, can do so with no commitment, no financial commitment. And hopefully then they'll stay with us for the longer term. And a larger membership should increase support and enable us to provide a weightier response against the threats that we're coming up against. Now, expenditure this year has been it's £461, and it's only gone up £3 on last year. The most expensive cost this year was the banners that we did for Aldenham Reservoir, but we all agree they've been they've been seen by a wide audience, so I think this is very worthwhile. We also paid the usual £77 for our website and our domain name. And then we've got, oh, thanks, Clive. And then we've got the 2 subscriptions that we pay for.
Said, thanks, Clive.
Which is the Campaign for Rural England. And we've also this year joined Open Spaces Society, which Marjorie did actually question in her as a part of her audit.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a serious. I mean, it was a noting as much a question.
It was a valid question. Why have we increased? We've found that the although Campaign for Rural England are very helpful, Open Spaces Society are also very active, and they have a lot of campaigns going, and they provide a lot of communication. So that's been a really valuable tool for us. I think for different areas, not for all areas. I think Woodcock Hill more likely, but also they've been talking about solar farms. So it has been useful for us. So just to summarise, the funds, as I say, stand at £5,177. They're sufficient for normal running costs, and they are also sufficient if we do get some sort of shortfall, if people do decide not to donate, as we've changed the membership. The only thing I'd say is they're not significant should we need legal advice or similar. because as we've seen, that can be quite expensive, and £5,000 wouldn't go an awful long way. But it's sufficient for our current needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. That was very constructive. Has anyone, would anyone like to question that at all? No? Right, well, we shall proceed to the election of officers. I assume that all our officers are willing to continue in office, with the exception of Jenny Jacobi, who has resigned as planning secretary, which I'm obviously very sorry about. But we all thank her for her many years of devoted work for the Greenbelt Society. Thank you, Jenny. Is there any other business? No? Well, in that case...
And if I just may, it's John Cartledge here.
Oh, hello, John.
Hi, I wonder if I could just utter one word of caution.
Yes.
Just to rise, thank you very much for your report, and my thanks and appreciation to you and your colleagues for all the hard work that you've done on behalf of the Society during the year. One of the topics you touched upon was the proposed solar farm at Slades Farm and Hillfield Farm. I know that this is a proposal that has excited a lot of controversy and some strong feelings. I don't particularly want to get into all the intricacies of the argument at this moment, because you've got some very interesting guest speakers lined up, but I would just make this passing observation that, generally speaking, the term NIMBYism is regarded as a derogatory expression. It's not something that you want to be accused of. And a large proportion, probably the majority of the arguments that I have seen advanced by opponents of this proposal, are actually arguments that are opposing solar farms in principle rather than this location in particular. Now, solar farms are legal, and the general view advanced by economists and the government is that renewable energy, including solar energy, has got to play a large and increasing share of the power supply in our society in the future. We all use electricity, and it's got to come from somewhere. And if carbon fossil fuels are no longer acceptable, then solar is one of the major alternatives. It's so wherever you put a solar farm, some of the attributes of a solar farm that have been listed by the critics will be common. So I don't think there's a lot to be achieved by simply opposing solar energy itself, because that's not something that's going to carry any weight with a government inspector. If you can find very compelling reasons why this is a less suitable site than some other site, well and good, advance those reasons. But otherwise, I think that you may find that you're arguing in a blind alley.
Thank you very much, John. That is very rational, and we do take that on board. And in fact, I think that Clive Glover has used the argument of loss of farmland, which is required for production of food, of course, as one of the arguments. But I agree, it is a debate which is ongoing. So does anyone else want to add anything? Because we mustn't keep our guest speakers waiting, because I know that Dawn Grocock has to be away by 4.
And I'd like to speak on solar farms, but after the guest speaker has finished.
Yes. Right. And to some extent, I regard the term NIMBY as a badge of honour. Certainly as far as our Greenbelt's concerned. So if I could now introduce our guest speaker or speakers, Dawn Grocock, Countryside and Rights of Way Officer for Hertfordshire County Council, and she is going to speak on local footpaths with Stephen Whiting, who is the enforcement officer for Countryside and Rights of Way for Hart County Council. Thank you both very much, and the stage is now yours.
Thank you. Like
John,
I have just,
sorry,
hello.
just to say, let me know if you want me to run your presentation or whether you can actually get it. You should be allowed to share your screen now if you want to.
Giving it a go now. If that's worked.
Yeah.
Yep, can you see the presentation? I just want to quickly correct, so I'm not actually a senior officer, I'm just an access officer within the Rights of Way team. The senior officer is actually my manager, Andrew Burton.
I was going to let you get away with that, Dawn.
Because only if I can take his pay grade. So I'll try and start the... Hopefully that should start from the beginning. I was going to do more of a kind of overview of public rights of way for the whole of the county, but obviously it all applies to every district within the county. I cover Hertsmere and Welland Hatfield districts, and then Steve will go on to pick up on some of the points I mentioned. So just introducing ourselves. We're part of the Countryside and Rights of Way team, which was previously the Public Rights of Way Service and then the Countryside Management Service. But we actually merged and joined, which brought in-house the volunteers as well as the health walks and the land management team that look after a lot of the parks for the district councils as well as helping us out with advice as well. I was going to start with a short quiz, so I don't know if anyone wants got paper handy and want to join in, but hopefully it should increase your knowledge of public rights of way as well. So just checking everyone can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Quiz.
Right, so it's an easier one with true and false. So I see it brings up the next slide, unfortunately. I don't know if people can see that or not.
Yeah.
Or is that only on my one?
You can probably change the way it's presented if you want to. Display settings, try.
I was giving away the answers.
At the top, there's something called display settings.
Ah, I see, yeah.
If you duplicate the slideshow, it'll come on the screen now.
Okay, is that just one at a time now?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, like everyone getting used to the new ways of working and technology. So true or false, rights of way have to be walked every year, otherwise they no longer exist.
So I think false.
We've seen the answer.
Okay, correct. False. Exist, well, in England anyway, the law is different in Scotland. They exist indefinitely unless the land they lie on is destroyed, coastal erosion, or they're changed by legal order.
Excuse me. On the screen upstairs, I've started something to do the house insurance, and I've got some quotes.
Right.
So will you have a look? I've left the actual thing just to compare.
So true or false, cyclists can use public bridleways?
That's true.
True.
Yep.
Yep.
So it came in the Countryside Act in 1968, which gave the rights, but it also meant cyclists are technically meant to give way to walkers and horse riders. They obviously had the rights before then. True or false, all towpaths are recorded public rights of way.
That's false.
Yeah, correct.
Oh.
Doing well. Most towpaths not recorded. But some are, obviously. The Canal and Rubber Trust encourages walking and cycling on their towpaths, but subject to a code. True or false, Green Lane is a legal classification for a route.
That's false.
False, yeah.
Yeah. Green Lane has no legal meaning. It's generally used to describe the physical characteristics of the route. e.g. vegetation underfoot or enclosed by hedges. There's no legal indication of the status. So, true or false, balls can be kept in fields crossed by public rights of way.
True.
Depends on a bit on the species, on the breed.
So it's mainly true, but yeah, correct. It's on the breed, and if they're accompanied by other bulls under 10 months. Unfortunately, a lot of our problems end up with bullocks, so that the young ones, and tend to be a bit playful and worrying to people, which I can definitely understand when I've been followed by them before.
Not always obvious whether they're over 10 months or not.
No, because I often have to, well, we have an identification book, but often we have to go on the farmer's technical knowledge of that. Unless we're really unsure, then we go to people like the NFU that are very helpful. But yes, I haven't stood in front of a bull with an identification book yet to see what happens. True or false, all rights of way have a standard width?
That's false. There's various widths.
Very well, various widths. There's Hatfield footpath 13, it's got 1'6", 49 centimetres, and Lily bio open to all traffic 24, which has a maximum width of 38 metres.
Oh,
Wow,
big.
that's a lot.
And true or false, the definitive map is always being updated.
True.
Yeah,
Definitely.
True.
Not fast enough.
So currently there are 6 definitive map officers, each with a target of processing 5 modification applications a year. Obviously, one application can take between 6 months and several years, depending on the case. And yes, I can definitely tell you they have a long backlog and always very busy.
Just ask her while she's there.
So this was the correct one. I put the presentation together. Anyone want to have a stab at how many miles, kilometres of current recorded public rights of way there are in Hertfordshire?
More than 1,000.
Hundreds. I don't know.
1,500 kilometres.
Yeah, 200,000 miles. So yeah, very close. So you'll probably be hopefully saying your knowledge on the quiz. You'll probably be very familiar with who can use a public footpath and what the rights are on public rights of way.
Yeah.
So I'll leave them up there for people to read rather than reading through them.
Oh, well.
Okay, to move on.
Those interesting questions with new technology, like these powered scooters, for instance, how they might be classified.
Well, I think currently they're not allowed on any public highway, which obviously public rights of way are all public highways, but then they've got the classifications of who can use them. I think technically at the moment they're only allowed on private land.
Yeah, that may be changing. There's some experimental areas.
So obviously when that changes, whether they'll be allowed on byways, because I know it has been raised before on public footpaths with motorised wheelchairs, and what the classification of speeds are and things, where they become beyond a motorised wheelchair.
Put a cushion in front.
In front of it.
Ways.
Can I ask, do electric bikes count the same as a normal bicycle?
I'm not sure on the fully electric. I think where they're electric assisted, they count as normal bicycles.
Okay.
But I'm not sure on the fully electric. I don't know if then they come under like the same as the motorised scooters.
No,
I think if they're assisted by
yeah.
you pedalling, then they
Exactly.
come under the same.
Depends if they have to be licensed or not.
Oh, I went too fast.
You can take it if you want to go.
Right, there we go. Restricted byways, which obviously
Uncomfortable.
the newest category of public rights of way, which were formerly road used as public paths or RUPs before the introduction of Countryside and Rights of Way Act.
Restricted byways, purple.
And byways open to all traffic.
Problem there is the phrase consistent with its use, because that can change.
Yeah, but obviously it's meant to be like a motorised vehicular highway, like the roads. It's obviously meant to be classed below that, but obviously motor vehicles can use them all, but it's meant to be the main use obviously by non-motorised vehicles, but obviously legally they do similar to roads in their classification. And then permissive paths, which with the landowner's permission, therefore can be removed at any time, but again have their place in people's use, and obviously easier often to persuade landowners to put them in than them actually committing to a fully recorded path. And then obviously once it's on the definitive map, you have to carry out a legal order to make any changes, whereas permissive path you don't, because it is just with the landowner's permission. Obviously for the public it doesn't give it any assurances of time unless it's attached to a legal agreement for development. And obviously you can have any type of permissive path, footpath or bridleway, and obviously a permissive path over a current public right of way, giving it higher rights but only with permission.
Oh,
So that's a breakdown of who
yesterday.
what.
You couldn't find it. That's a good one.
And obviously with the extra that you'll see on the web version of the definitive map, the classifications, mainly the temporary footpaths and temporary closed paths, are used when there's quarrying or long-term works. Where the path has to then be formally diverted, but only for a period of time, then put back again. And the unmetalled, unclassified county roads, which have come over from highways, which aren't shown on the definitive map, but shown on the online map for people to use similarly to the byways. And then public rights of way, where there's a permanent traffic regulation order on. And then again, details of that are on the website of who can use it and often sometimes when. And then obviously the OS map has different symbols and some carries the disclaimer, obviously things shown on OS maps, the back to the legal definitive map is what should always be checked. And then as I was saying about the web maps are on the main Hertfordshire County Council website. We have a GIS map that you can click on to do look at the web maps, and then also a Google map, which is advantageous for people because as you walk along you can load it, so you have the little dot so you know where you are and what you're following. And then obviously when you're out and about, you may find various problems that you need to report to us. So obviously those that are local to the area and know the paths well are probably spotting which paths these are from.
No,
A few more issues that we come across.
So I'm sorry, but what's to report?
So then who is responsible for what? So fallen trees, scrub and hedges. Generally hedges will be the landowner because there'll be a boundary feature. Trees also generally a boundary feature, and it'll be where the tree's rooted. But obviously there are some trees that are rooted within the public rights of way. And again, that's the same with scrub. So then that'll become our responsibility rather than the landowner's either side or the owner of the land under the path. Fallen fencing again is generally a householder or landowner, unless it's a safety fence that we've installed. Waymarking signposts are generally down to us, unless they're on a permissive path, and they're generally maintained by the landowner. And ploughing and cropping issues, obviously that would be down to the landowner, and Steve will follow up with details of when action's taken on them. Broken bridges, again, they're generally down to us if it's used solely for the public right of way. If it's a joint bridge, so it's a footpath bridge for only walkers, but the landowner uses it as a vehicular bridge, then we'll only give a percentage to maintenance, and the main maintenance will actually come under the landowner as their responsibility. And again, with structures, it depends what their use is and why they're installed. So if they're installed for public safety, then it comes under ourselves. But if they're installed for stock control, then it will come under the landowner. And then misuse, that again, it's a kind of mixture between ourselves and the police and the landowner. And the surface, again, if it's only for the people using it from the public point of view, then it'll be down to ourselves. But if it's used by the landowner as well, then obviously we only give a percentage towards maintenance, and the landowner, or those that have got access rights along there, will be the main people that will have to fund the maintenance for that. And again, if landowners rather damage the surface, we'll be generally going to them, asking them to put right the damage, rather than obviously ourselves. If the public that are using the route are damaging it, then obviously that will come back to ourselves as well. So how you report issues when you find them on public rights of way, obviously you can come direct to us, but the preferred way, although unfortunately the map's not the best at the moment, our web team are looking at updating the map so it's easier to use, is just hitting the report a fault button, and also hopefully updating the categories as well. So obviously, as things develop over the last few years, it's kind of working on what's there and listening to feedback we've had for improving things, for getting reports through to us. Then what happens to reports? They're assessed by the access officers, that cover the whole county. We have then a group of midweek volunteers and specific smaller groups of task force volunteers that can go out to smaller items. Fortunately, obviously, a lot of the volunteering has been on hold for the last 2 years with the pandemic, which obviously has been missed by a lot of people. But we're starting to start up the groups now in groups of 6 and expand them, and obviously work in a COVID safe way to be able to get them out and about again, which obviously is great help for myself, and getting things done quickly. And then obviously for larger jobs, or jobs volunteers can't tackle as contractors, and then obviously some can't unfortunately do everything, so we have to park some low priority items. So the way we prioritise works is on public safety, level of use, and the significant impact on the network. And obviously, being down in the south of the county, you're luckier, because most of them, especially on the level of use and the impact on the network, is kind of higher priority than obviously towards the north of the county, where there's less people, and the public rights of way are a lot more rural. And then we also now have our path surveyors, which go out and report on issues to us. Because you sometimes wouldn't believe that people report a small kind of issue and then forget to report the very dangerous bridge they found, or people walk over a dangerous bridge and don't think to report it to us. So the PAF volunteers are very good on reporting everything they find and then carrying out small works as they go along, which is a really great help to us. So yeah, I think that's hopefully covered most of the general of what I do data today and how issues come in. So I don't know if you want to do questions now or at the end after Steve.
No.
Well, shall we have questions for Dawn in case you have to go?
Yes, can do, yeah.
Hey, please may I ask you a question, Dawn? How can we find out the status on a right-of-way request that's been put forward that we might have been involved with but not actually put forward ourselves?
So an application?
Yeah.
So all the applications that are logged are on the website. I don't know if it lets me share.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the ones are logged, but otherwise it'd be going direct to the definitive map team, asking where an application is. But they should be on the Herts County Council website. And you type in public rights of way.
Yeah.
That'll take you to the main page.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go.
Okay.
And then there's a thing called applications there.
I wonder if I might ask a question of Dawn. As members who've read their newsletter will be aware, one of the most problematic paths in Elstree and Borehamwood is our only example, I think, of a byway open to all traffic, and that's Tykeswater Lane that runs from Theobald Street across to Watling Street opposite Butterfly Lane, which is in Aldenham Parish. In fact, most of the lane is in Aldenham Parish, but the section nearest to Theobald Street down to the ford through the brook is in Elstree and Borehamwood. It's in an appalling state, and there's been a lot of complaints about inappropriate use. I wonder if Dawn could update us on the changes she's trying to achieve in its legal status and the difficulties those have run into and why.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, first of all, I'll just say, so this is the page where obviously you've got the definitive map, public rights of way, report of fault, and then make or view an application. So that's where you'll click on, and it will list all the applications. And under there as well, it also lists section 31 deposits, which is where a landowner can put in a deposit to say they recognise these rights of way and no others on their land, which is often a useful tool for people who've been walking routes thinking they're a right of way, but they're not actually recorded.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, going back to Tykeswater Lane, so I tried to do the order for restricting motor vehicle use, but sort of 4x4 motor vehicle use, but with permits. And obviously a lot of the feedback came back with not including motorbikes. So I've been speaking to the various landowners along the route about what fencing they could carry out if we look to put barriers in, which help stop motorbikes as well. But I need to go through a highway safety audit for any barriers that I put near the roadside to make sure they're happy that the barriers are safe and not going to cause an issue for the road. So once I've got agreement from then, I was hoping to look at then including motorbikes and horse-drawn carriages into the order, but we're still with the permits, obviously. So obviously, otherwise, kind of stuck in the middle. So we get objections, obviously, for people who would like it all motor vehicles banned. But then, obviously, if we ban all motor vehicles without the permits, then we'll get objections from the 4x4 clubs and societies. So the permits are seen as a way of kind of regulating that, so we only let people on that have a permit, and then obviously we can monitor the permits, and then if there's issues, go back to them, kind of say, well, you've kind of had your chance here, you need to monitor who's using it and what the issues are, and obviously the police can help with that monitoring as well. We've done that on a route called Fox's Lane in Welham Green. I don't know if anyone knows the Rookery Cafe in Welham Green. It runs behind there, and there were similar issues there. But actually, as that one runs along a watercourse, the damage was then making neighbouring properties flood. So since putting the permit system in there, the people in the 4x4 clubs have been monitoring that very closely to make sure they don't then lose their rights to use it. And the people that just want to go down and cause a mess are kept out, because everyone has to give over all their details of who can use it. And obviously they're past the police as well. So we're looking at using a similar scheme, but including the motorbikes and horse-drawn carriages in the order, which we haven't done before. Which is obviously more of a challenge for the barriers and fencing. It's easier to get around.
Yes. No.
Sorry.
There's a man.
Sorry, I thought someone was asking a question. But so hopefully that explains the situation where we are, and then moving forward to what hopefully looking at doing.
So the matter is in hand. I mean,
Yeah.
how many of these 4x4 groups or motorcycling groups are there? I mean, how big is the clamour from that constituency?
The main people are there's the Trail Riders Fellowship, and then various Hertfordshire 4x4 groups, and the Green Lane Society, which are the national groups. Obviously, you have to consult kind of a wide range of people to make sure everyone's consulted.
And the problem is that the 4x4s have been doing huge damage to not the surface of the road, and they've been wandering off into the areas along either side of the road. Anybody who goes down there can see these tire marks. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
Some of the slopes.
Which obviously they shouldn't be doing that. It should be sticking to the route. And obviously once, hopefully if we get this order in place, then we'll be able to look at works to the route to then improve it. Obviously we didn't want to spend money on improving it. If then people that are just going out to cause a mess then cause damage. But obviously it's restricting it to the people in the clubs that don't go out to cause damage to the routes, just want to enjoy the routes as they are.
It seems to me to be an enforcement problem.
Sorry?
It seems to me you'll have an enforcement problem.
Yeah, well, obviously police, but there's nothing they can enforce at the moment because obviously trespass is a private matter. It's not a criminal offence. It's obviously a criminal offence if they haven't got tax, insurance, and they're driving dangerously, as with any road, which the police would then be able to enforce. I've sort of brought it up with the police, but obviously it has to be kind of reported to them each time, unfortunately, for them to take action, rather than obviously they have other priorities for not being able to kind of look at there all the time.
Well, it's good to know that the issue is before you and that it's being addressed. But clearly, a lot of repair work will have to be done to the surface of the road, or that section that hasn't been surfaced in the past will have to be brought up to standard in future if what you have in mind is to succeed. But in the meantime, there's another persistent problem, which, as you're well aware, is dumping on the verges alongside Tykes Water Lane. I don't think this is 4x4 people. This is people who driving down there deliberately in order to tip stuff into the hedges, and there seems to be a difference of view between yourselves at the county and Hertsmere about the extent to which the Concord Act that gives Hertsmere the responsibility for cleaning verges on roadsides extends to this road or not, because they're very loath to go down there and this stuff is left dumped.
There's a county-wide protocol that was being put in place which covers all public rights of way and all motorised vehicular highways, tarmac roads, carriageways, that states that obviously if it's totally obstructing the route, ourselves or highways will remove it. But if it's not totally obstructing the route, then it'd be down to the district council under the, I think it's Environmental Protection Act. But I don't think all the district councils, including Hertsmere, have signed up to this yet. So I think there's various discussions going on with the waste team, because I know then when it's removed, then it's taken to the waste sites. So it's the main Hertfordshire waste team that actually deal with this protocol and then what happens, because obviously we don't carry out any enforcement on fly tipping, whereas obviously Hertsmere Borough Council do.
Well, who should we be putting pressure on to get this sorted? Your colleagues at county or Hertsmere, or both?
I presume both, yeah.
Right, we'll do that because we're all very concerned about the Tykes Water Lane situation.
I mean, obviously, I'm hoping
concerned about the footpath around Aldenham Reservoir. What's the progress on having that declared a public right of way?
Like I say, again, that's with our definitive map team, and I believe the rural estates team are involved in that as well. So I have to get an update from them on that.
That's gone to the planning inspectorate, hasn't it? That's subject to appeal from the owners of the site.
There goes Angela Hickson from the definitive map team that's dealing with that case.
Yeah, but I think it's out of county's hands now. It's with the department, the environment, because, as I say, it's a matter for a planning inspector to give a ruling.
Right, yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can ask Angela for an update and then share that.
That would be very helpful.
Right, Angela, what's her name?
Hickson.
Hickson, okay. Right. Well, thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions for Dawn?
Can I just ask a small one? I like styles, but I'm finding there's not that many. It's a bit difficult sometimes to clamber over them, and it probably restricts older people going down certain areas. Do you want to keep them, or are you planning to put gates in instead? Or
yeah, no, it's our, well, we don't authorise any new styles in Hertfordshire because, yeah, obviously from the Equalities Act point of view, a lot of people find them difficult. So, yeah, our first choice would always be a kissing gate or a gate. But again, obviously, because it's the landowner's structure generally there to control their stock. Obviously, if it's not needed for livestock, then it can just come out and there'll be a gap. But if it is needed, then obviously it's trying to persuade them to put a kissing gate or a gate in to British standard. So it is an easier structure. And so obviously, if they put a stile in, we won't authorise it. So technically it will be an illegal obstruction on the public right of way, which would get passed to Steve. But we are, there's a new kind of project from kind of hopefully COVID money that we're being given from central government to look at improvements to rights of way surface and structures, and a number of them have been identified where improvements can be made because there has been so many more people out using the public rights of way, and the government's seen the health benefit for that, so it's encouraging more people out by making it easier for people.
There's actually only one stile in our parish that's left. That's on the path that goes down from the Holly Bush in Elstree down to Aldenham Reservoir. That was in a very bad state, and it's recently been repaired by the landowner, but there's still quite a number of stiles in neighbouring parishes, several certainly in Shenley, which local walkers will come across.
Yeah, obviously.
And also Harrow
finding it
Butler as
difficult.
well.
Definitely let us know about.
Dawn, can I really quickly ask,
yeah.
if it's shown on the if a path is shown as a footpath in purple on the definitive, oh, it does says it's not the definitive map, the rights of way map, is that definitely a footpath that's got to stay rather than a permissive path?
Yes, permissive paths aren't shown on the definitive map or the online map. They've just generally been shown on site with a permissive arrow.
Okay,
yeah, anything that's shown definitive map, you need an order to change.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
I think that statement about it not being the definitive map is rather confusing. I think it goes back to the fact that legally the definitive map is the printed version.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So everything else we have to call a working copy because the legal one and it's the printed one, which is kept at County Hall in Hertford and various libraries.
Okay,
have a copy, and that problem is that's only updated every 5 to 10 years. So unfortunately, it's pretty much out of date as soon as it is printed because orders happen all the time.
For most practical purposes, the online map is fine.
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dawn. Can we ask Stephen to give his talk now, please?
Yeah, definitely. Try and sort out my ID. So, so hello everybody. As I said, my name's Steve. I've only been with the Rights of Way team since end of January. I'm doing a fast learning curve and trying to work out what's what and everything else. Previously, I was at Redbridge Borough when I was there for about 3-4 years, I think it was. I was doing something completely different there, but still enforcement, but completely different to what this entails. I was mainly doing noise nuisance, brothels, closure brothels, in Ilford and places like that. What else was doing? Travellers' sites and stuff like that. Previous to that, I'm actually a retired police officer, but I was in the Met for 30 years. So I wanted to have a bit of a change and saw this job come up and thought that suited me, since I take my Cocker Spaniel out 2 or 3 times a day. So that was that sort of kind of was the lure for me to go across the travelling. So I cover the whole of the county. So any specifics, I'll have to refer back to Dawn really, because I don't know, but hopefully we'll know as time goes on, your where are you, Hertsmere area, aren't you? So I've got a few jobs down there. I don't want to go into specifics or anything, but there's some quite long-winded jobs that have been going on for about, well, some 70 odd years that still yet to be resolved. I think I've got about 10 cases that I'm trying to, a bit like cold cases you get in the police really, where somebody else comes in, has new eyes on them, as they say, and tries to get some momentum, to try to get some resolution. So that's mainly what it's all about, really, to try to find a satisfactory sort of kind of result that would suit, if not everybody, the majority, hopefully, while, you know, protecting, maintaining and improving the rights of way as we go along, because that's the main sort of purpose of the rights of way team. So as I say, my role is basically, you've got project access officers like Dawn, who obviously down at your end, but there are 5 others. And they are really the eyes and ears of your son, a bit like, I'm going to go back to the police officer again, a home beat sort of thing, so they know. Hopefully you know who he or she is, knows the main areas, the points of contact and stuff. So when a complaint of a possible infringement of the regulations comes out, they'll be the first people to sort of kind of investigate it on a low level. As I say, because it's only me, you know, I can't zoom around all over the place looking at any sort of every single allegation. So what they'll do is they'll go out and have a look and say, yes, they are aware of something. Also, there's the definitive map officers, they may know it. But at the end of the day, when it comes back to me, it might take a couple of weeks before it lands on my desk. And what I do is I review the rights of way file. Every single right of way has got its own file. Some of them just have what it is, how long it is, and everything else. And some of them go on for pages if there's been any previous action, if there's been any diversion and things like that. So it sometimes takes a long time to get through to what is current status and who's done what to when and all the rest of it. Next thing I do is I have a site visit, go down there, have a look. Try to engage with whoever's down there, because the main thing I want to try to do and save everybody money is to find some resolution there and then, or get things moving towards that sort of side. There's lots of times where, you know, I've got a history of I actually like is having a chat, working out what their issues are. There's lots of times when the people are stressed out. The reason they've done what they've done, say an obstruction or put a fence across or something like that, it's because they see it as the only alternative after being harassed by trespassers and everything else. So I've got to gain their trust really, and I like the kind of problem solving. And so rather than send out, which I really refuse to do, send out warning notices like pizza delivery notices, I like to sort of try and speak to them on the level, get their email address, get the contact details, and try to sort something out. Now, if all else fails, and if the clock is ticking and I get a lot of flannel and people refuse to engage, then there's no other option. They have to be aware that, you know, I will use delegated powers and look for prosecution. I haven't really got that far so far. I mean, well, not negotiation, working along with the solicitors for a couple of ones about 2 particular cases, but not saying be successful, but touching wood, we are actually moving a few of these things forward. So that's the whole process, really. So one of the main jobs I actually deal with is obstruction, and I'm sure you might have come across things yourself where signs of vegetation or a gate or something like that. But I won't go through the legislation because it's there for you to see, but the types of stuff could be a fence, could be a wall, anything deposited on the highway. You know, even if it's just taking out, say, a verge or somebody put a stone down on the end of their boundary, which is not their boundary, and it infringes on the actual width of the highway, is an obstruction. So you could walk around it, you could step aside and continue, but it is not.
Why don't they do anything about trees that obstruct pavements?
Sorry, was that a question? Is it?
Sure.
Anyway, so and then we have such things as overhanging vegetation, which Dawn has just touched on slightly in the last presentation, which I think is about trees as well. So if it's on the landowner's side and it is causing obstruction, hanging down, well, that is down to them, and I'll be speaking to them regarding it. Now, these are live cases, but they're not in your areas, so I'm quite happy to show you them. But on each time, there's on the one on the left, I know the photographs aren't great, they're mine. There's one on the left. Now, basically, the post you see is the way marker, rights of way marker, and it goes straight through the farmyard. And the farmer has gated his cattle in between along the rights of way. And the actual farm was a satellite farm for him, so it was just a place where he actually used his place for his cattle to graze and to be fed. He actually had 4 other places as well on his main farm. And so I had to go down there, see this. The farmer was very aloof from everything else, but I eventually found out that the farm, which is disused, but wasn't was subject to a planning application. So I went through the North Herts planning and found that you obviously have to identify any tenants that are on your land, found out the farmer's details, and then went through a case of consultation with him. But it was the first time he knew about it, or at least he said it was the first time, because I had to go through letting agents. The actual company who owned it were a city investment group who wouldn't engage either. But as soon as I saw the farmer, we resolved that very quickly, I'm glad to say. But it's not one of the only cases I've come across where capital will be used. And so, well, I can't do anything with them. They're there all the time. It's always been like that. Well, that's not the case. It has to be sorted out. The actual photograph on the right is a timber yard, as you can see, and the lumberjacks, whoever work, the ones, the cutters, they put logs across the footway. Now, these could easily be stepped across for able-bodied persons, but obviously,
If you want to go, I should go.
For less
if you want to go.
For less able-bodied people, wheelchairs and such could never have the opportunity of using it. And most of the time it's education as well, because these people couldn't see an issue with it, especially if it was just small logs or little heaps of sawdust and things like that. And so
I know. Any other questions?
And so, yeah, so meeting people on site does resolve a lot of issues, and just talking through anything else. So that was resolved, yeah, as I say, it's just going on site, but these people will, if we're given a chance, they will sort of just take the time, not do anything, or wish this and wish that. So I have a habit of just going on site every now and then to make sure they still adhere to what they've actually said. The one on the left that's obviously overgrown, that's a type of obstruction that they don't realise. There's a gap to the right, you could use that if you wanted to. Well, that's not the case. The definitive line goes straight through that fencing. So the actual user has to actually move to one side, so therefore it's an obstruction. The one on the right is an electric fence, and that's actually putting out 2 rights of way across the field. He thought that a bungee type equipment, where you can actually pull it with a handle, you can pull it across and release it, was adequate. But then again, it's, as we said before, the Qualities Act doesn't allow for that to happen. It can be used on a temporary basis for grazing, but then again, it's still seen as obstruction if it's there permanently. If I'm going too fast or too slow, please tell me. There's no. What we have here is another obstruction. Now, the landowner had a terrible time with travellers, motorcyclists from a nearest site who were, this is a bridleway, should I point out, and basically they were screaming around in the motorcycles, turning up the crops, obviously damaging the right of way, frightening the horses, and they were at their wits' end, not knowing what to do. So they thought that what's on the, if you see the actual gate on the right, I know it could be obscured by the actual small picture, but basically that's a horse drop gate. So the horse could actually just sort of kind of walk across it. Now Dawn will probably know more about that since she's a rider, but it meets with a specification, the British standard, and basically it's a way to prevent vehicles and hopefully motorcycles from actually using it. Now the motorcyclists saw that as a challenge, and so the landowner decided to increase the size of the actual gate, and that's the one on the left-hand side. They put a wooden block on it, which unfortunately, it not only is an obstruction because it actually changes the actual gate, but it actually assisted the motorcyclists and sort of more of a challenge. Now, working with these landowners, we've actually improved the ditches, and we're at present we're actually putting in other restrictive measures such as restrictive gaps and things like that. It's an ongoing thing, but not all of the, well, hardly any of these things are resolved overnight. So it is really working with the local councillors, the landowners, and any tenants to try to resolve it. And so it's gone back to its original state, but we are assisting with a sort of crime prevention plan with the rural police as well, regarding the actual the trials bikers going across there. Now, this time of year, or it's coming up to it, is obviously the crops and the disturbance of the surface of the right of way through ploughing or well, mainly ploughing basically. And you see that's a local field to my that's known to me, where I take my dog for a walk, and it's had no path there for quite a while actually, which I thought was a bit cheeky, but and they haven't reinstated it, and that's been ploughed for over 28 days. So as it says, the landowner can plough or otherwise disturb the path surface, provided it is not reasonably convenient to avoid doing so. The path must be restored within 24 hours of disturbance or within 2 weeks. It can go to 28 days for exceptional circumstances. But so as the year goes on, I know we've had some terrible rainy weather in, what was it, January, I think it was. I know you mentioned boats and the disturbance to the surface there. And I dealt with a lot of complaints regarding people using motor vehicles on boats. subsidence, damage to bridges and such like that. And as the weather goes on and the crops start growing, I'm sure that my job total will increase quite considerably, so that they can, the landowner or the tenant farmer will have to keep a specified width across the field or a gap around the side, which could be 1.5 meters, 1 meter across and 1.5 meters to the side if it's just a footpath, and double that if it's a bridleway. But these things are starting, well, I hate to say it, cropping up as the later in the year it goes. Yeah, so further than that, we can serve notice on the occupier if necessary to restore the path. That's something that I will be doing, hopefully by consultation, but I'm sure at some point there will be some legislative prosecution regarding that. And also, it doesn't actually sort of refer to grass or hay or silage, but it's for him to actually prove that.
That's good.
Bulls, I think we've covered that already, but there's a list of the bulls on a 10-month are fine, obviously, but you've got the dairy
cattle
that are banned from fields that are crossed by public under all circumstances. But all of the bulls are 10 months, over 10 months, are also banned unless accompanied by cows and heifers. But I do spend a lot of time in fields with bulls and everything else. I've never had any problems with them, but we do get occasionally complaints regarding cows and bulls, but not specifically horses for some reason. When I first turned up, we had laws for dangerous horses in the north, which is covered by any other animal, really. And that can be under the Animals Act, where a landowner, tenant, farmer, knowing, now I don't know how you tested this in court previously, but you have to know that your animal was aggressive in the first place. And I don't think they're going to tell you, oh yes, he's bitten 2 people already, so that's why I let him out, and that's why he bit you. But the Animals Act covers any animal that's aggressive or injured people. You've got the Dangerous Dogs Act as well, which is some legislation that I've covered in my previous life in the police as well. Section 3 of the Dogs Act is dog are dangerously out of control. The dangerously out of control is something that is a legal argument, really. It doesn't mean it's on a lead or anything, or off a lead. It's something that the owner's got no control of, the keeper of the animal, basically. And then you've got environmental crime, such as cow slurry from sheds going on across onto the highway. Now, it'll be under the Environment Protection, and we can put in such things as PSPOs, public space protection orders, and that's to protect the community from somebody else's behaviour, which is detrimental to the environment. Now, I've used that previously for Japanese knotweed. I forgot to mention that was another one of my branches that I used to deal with. I was the Japanese knotweed officer for Redbridge, and if you allowed it to go onto someone else's land, that was obviously an offence because it's an invasive species. It's not actually an offence to have it on your own land, but if you allowed it to go on somewhere else's, that's an offence. So it can be used as a PSPO. It's not something that would be widely used on the rights of way team. Stiles and gates, I think I've covered that already, really. They have to be approved by the rights of way team to a specific standard. If it's not approved by us, there's no right of appeal to it. It's either a yes or a no. They don't have any appeal to it. As we've said previously, the implementation of or the erection of new stiles is something that we don't do anymore for the Freedom to Roam, the Equalities Act. So if there is going to be a gap that's going to be gated by a kissing gate, as long as the actual landowner can say that it's going to keep livestock in there or breed horses. So there has to be a reason for a gate in the first place. I can't say I'm just going to put a kissing gate there. It has to be a reason to prevent the egress and egress of people through a field that's got cattle or horses are breeding in there. As I said before, the requirements and permissions prevent animal from escaping, as I just said. The installation styles is no longer supported by us, and the maintaining is the owner's responsibility to look after them. We can actually repair them ourselves, but it becomes a cost to them if they refuse to do it. So we can actually sort of go in there and do it ourselves. Now, Dawn did actually mention something about the COVID fund, and we're trying to improve a lot of areas where the styles are either going to be replaced or they've fallen well below a workable sort of or a hazard. So there's going to be that's quite a large implementation and an upgrade of kissing gates around the area. These are two of the gaps reducing vehicle traffic. We've got one that's a gap that's actually allows somebody putting a wheelchair through. The one on the right, which is a bit difficult to identify, but that's a boat. Well, sorry, that's a restricted byway, should I say. It used to be a boat, and so the posts are put in there to stop motor vehicles going through there. And the concrete block, which is partly obscured from the left, that was put there by the landowner, because even when they put the posts in there to stop the vehicle traffic, the four-wheel drivers tried to drag the posts away. So they put the concrete post there, the concrete block there, which weighs a couple of tons. And they brought in a huge vehicle and tried to drag and nick the concrete block itself to try to get access to it. And so they had to actually concrete the whole thing down to stop them being nicked, basically. But there's two other restrictive things. So the idea of this one on the right is for the carriage to go across there, as it's a byway and a carriage can use it, but it does restrict vehicle traffic going through there. Now, these are two examples of really poor styles that I've actually dealt with, and I'm going through a legal prosecution right now. The left-hand one is, well, you can tell it's a complete danger to anybody who tries to attempt it. First of all, there's one plank of wood across it, which you need to raise your leg to such a ridiculous standard. I nearly fell into the mud on the other side trying to do it. And on the one on the right, it's actually completely disintegrated. There's no step or anything. Now, these gates are number 2 and 3 in succession. And so the landowner who's completely reneged on his responsibility to actually sort of maintain those. And we'll be seeking a prosecution regarding those two, well, 3 of them altogether. And there's another type of job. This is the common. He's not too far away from you, actually. And what happens is the village common was sold, and it was sold as manorial waste, which is a bit of a mouthful. And basically, years gone by, the Lord of the Manor allowed a certain amount of land to the commoners or the villagers to allow their land to graze on, which would obviously be your village common. But on the actual statement that actually licenses it as a common, you've got freedom to roam on it, and freedom to allow everybody within the village to allow their animals to graze on it. Now, that doesn't stop you from walking across it, enjoying a nice green common, obviously. But the builder or developer wasn't aware of that. He didn't know what manorial waste was, and so he fenced it all off and decided to try to build on it. until we stopped them from doing it. Now, this is a legal one I'm going through now, through the Property Law of Property Act 1924. There's no stated cases on this where something like this has ever happened before. So myself and the legal team are at present working through the legislation to try to get this, first of all, the fencing removed, which is obstruction to any person wanting to use it. And secondly, to stop that they actually cut back loads of vegetation. So that's something that's an ongoing situation, and it's something that nobody's really come across. I've tried with other councils, and nobody's got a precedent on that. So we might actually be doing that, but that's something else I'm engaged in. So there we are. I know it's short and brief, but I thought rather than go on legislation, I'd sort of give you a sort of kind of an update on some of the actual jobs I'm dealing with. Is that all right, or do you want for me to sort of kind of elaborate a little bit more?
That's a very informative talk, Stephen. Thank you very much. And I feel an increase in confidence that enforcement will actually take place as a result of what you've been saying. Has anyone got any questions for Stephen?
Yeah, I see John Cartledge has his hand raised.
Right.
Thanks, Ed. Just one point. I'm not sure that it falls within the area of legal enforcement through the courts, but it's certainly an issue, I think, of good footpath management and good practice. It is the case that quite a number of the wooden kissing gates in this part of the world, and not far away from Elstree, there are also examples of wooden stiles with the same problem, where barbed wire has been wrapped around the posts on either side that support the gate or the stile as an extension of the barbed wire fence that this structure provides a way through. And anybody going through the gate or climbing over the stile is at risk of injuring themselves because of the presence of this this barbed wire. I do hope it's something that the county officers, when they become aware of it, will be do their best to discourage, because it's clearly a hazard and something that's undesirable in itself. You can't prevent people using barbed wire fencing, but wrapping the barbed wire around structures that legitimate path users have to use and creating the risk of their coming into contact with it, I think is very undesirable.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, actually, John, because basically there is some legislation regarding barbed wire. It's under the Highways Act again. I think it's section 164, which basically, if you think of a barbed wire fence, the one side of it has to have the barbed wire attached to it, and the other is just the post. Now, I know this is not exactly what you're pinning down what you just said, but if somebody was to have a barbed wire fence, it has to be on the opposite, put the fixing on the opposite side to what the actual walker is, or the user of the actual the right of way. It's not good practice, and it can be seen as a health and safety breach if they actually put the barbed wire on the other side. And if you were to rip yourself or rip your coat and things like that, they can be liable. So that brings it back on to wrapping barbed wire around a stile. And I would say that the same legislation would actually sort of fit that as well, actually. So the project, obviously, people like Dawn, we all highlight this, and if it became a problem that they didn't change, that's something I would be involved in. But so no, there is section, I think 164 of the Highways Act about barbed wire, and so there is a stick to wave around if they don't adhere to it and remove it.
Well, that's very useful to know, Stephen. I'm grateful for that reference. But you're saying that where we are aware of instances of this, you'd be happy for us to be reporting it to you.
Yeah, if there's obviously a threat of injury to a user of the right of way, we want to know about it. And so before it fall on, you report it on the system that Dawn has shown you on our website. and flanked up and it was investigated. Person, as I say before, we always try to sort of work with the landowners, tenants, or farmers, etc., to try to sort it out. But yeah, it's something. Anything that will cause injury or harm to somebody, or even animals, we'd like to know about it, and we'll try to address it straight away.
I actually dealt with one in Radlett a few years ago, which actually ripped someone's coat, and they ended up taking it down a private insurance route, and then soon the farmer removed all the barbed wire from near any of the structures, because the British standard says barbed wire shouldn't be within, or electric fencing shouldn't be uncovered within 1 metre of the structure. So any new structures going in, we wouldn't actually authorise them if there was barbed wire or electric fencing not covered over within 1 metre of it. Obviously existing ones, it would be contacting the farmer or landowner. But yeah, we have in the past. So unfortunately, like everything, it is prioritising everything. But yeah, it's good for us to know about them.
That's very helpful, and spare your blushes, Dawn, whilst you're still with us. I wonder if I might just utter a public word of appreciation, for you and I have worked together on path issues in this area for a number of years, and I've always found your interventions very prompt and very helpful. So I'd like to be able to say that in front of a wider audience, to acknowledge the very hard work and constructive outcomes that you've achieved. So thank you very much.
That's nice to know, thank you.
Maybe that previous promotion's in order then.
Any day now.
Like I say, pleased to know as well with anyone that walks from Haggerston Road up towards the stud there, Elstree and Borehamwood footpath 54, the surfacing works now starting, and a number of the structures up there also being improved. There was a very narrow kissing gate, the Woodhall stud, that's it, if anyone knows round there. Yeah, the surface has been improved and the structure's just been improved there as well. It's actually a new square type kissing gate, so anyone goes and tests it, it'd be useful to have feedback on it, because that's one that's been put in place to stop misuse by motorbikes.
That's been a problematic path for a long time, so thank you for all the work that's gone in there recently.
Can I just ask a question to the people, because I'm dealing with certain issues where you reside as well, and you mentioned the solar farm, but there's a long-standing issue as well at the Elstree aerodrome regarding footpath over an 8 and a byway, a bridleway, which I can't remember the number of right now. But are you aware of the rights of way there? And has anybody got any opinion on what should happen about that? Song silence there.
I know it's an issue that Dawn is well aware of. In fact, she and I booked to have a telephone conversation about it in the next day or two.
Yeah.
It's going back 70 plus years, because the footpaths were there before the aerodrome opened, and that was in the mid 1930s. So it's been a problem for 85 years. There's one footpath that is open and crosses the runway, and there's another one that's not been in use and effectively blocked for ever since the Second World War. And it's a long-standing legal nonsense as it is at the moment.
Well, John, I have to sort of kind of put my hand up, because I've been on site quite a few times with Dawn, and we're actually in consultation with the Alderman estate regarding it, so I know a bit more about it than I was letting out. I just wanted to see a consensus opinion, if anybody had any real feelings about any possible diversion that we could put in around it. Anybody for it, just sort of, or against it? And so you seem very well. A few people seem to not like the idea of a solar panel farm. So I was thinking about the actual sort of diversion around the runway, but less so it sounds anyway.
I don't think it's very difficult to discuss this in the abstract, but I'm very happy to continue that conversation offline or on site. There are two possible options. One is to divert the footpath, the other is to divert the runway, and I suspect opinions will differ as to which of those is the preferable.
I'll let you. Obviously, it's something you can have a discussion with Dawn about, because that's something you've already sorted out. But it's something we've been trying to been working on for quite a few months now. But yeah, another time, another place, maybe.
I can well understand why the aerodrome doesn't like having people processing across its runway, even though it's a part of the runway that isn't in regular use by planes landing or taking off. But it's probably a unique example of a public right-of-way crossing an active runway, and it isn't something you would create from scratch if it didn't exist already. It's a curious historical accident, really.
Well, that's what drew me to it. Actually, it was one of the first things I actually thought was quite exciting to get involved in. I don't know if I feel like that now, anyway. But we'll see. But I'll let you and Dawn to chat about that, and hopefully we'll go forward on it.
There is a road across a runway in the Shetland Islands, but that's controlled by traffic lights.
Well, having worked in Gibraltar, I can say the same works there as well, actually.
I wanted to ask Stephen if ever your work might lead you into danger. I'm reassured that you go for cooperation rather than confrontation, but there is a possibility that things could get out of hand, isn't there?
Yeah, I do think about sort of risk and risk assessment, because basically I could sort of go into a farm in the middle of nowhere and I haven't got radio or something like that. I've got a phone, but I do sort of do a bit of research before I go and work out what's going to happen. And but you know, I'd be honest with you, I've never really come across anything unusual. I mean, I'm used to in my past you know, sort of work and everything else. And sometimes I think when I first started work, it was quite a remote area, so your approach to people was completely different to somewhere else. But yeah, it's always a softly thing, and if in doubt, I'll just walk away. I mean, I'd rather go home and have a cup of tea with my wife than go to hospital. So, but yeah, I think I just do a bit of research. I think if I'm going to go to somewhere I'm not too sure about, I do let people know, and I'll say I'm on this site, and then I've left the site, and then that's it then. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to please everybody, obviously, in the role I'm in. But yeah, I haven't come across anything yet, and hopefully not. So.
Glad to hear it.
I have to say, from our point of view, the access officers as well, it's very nice having an enforcement officer, especially with the police background, to back us up on site when we've gone out to cases where we've often not known they're going to get confrontational, or then when we're going to places unknown and people unknown. That has definitely helped on the access officer side.
Good.
Well, it's one of the things I enjoy doing is going out, and I've got that many emails and stuff like that, but it's nothing better than going out. And we've got such wonderful countryside in Hertfordshire that it's good to go out there and just enjoy that, and then deal with the job and go to something else. But yeah, I'm very much an outdoors person than indoors.
There may be aggressive farmers in some places. The main problem here is not cattle. There are very few cattle in this part of the world. I can't remember last time I saw a bull in a field locally. You're more likely to encounter an alpaca than you are to encounter cattle around here. But there are numerous livery stables, and therefore plenty of horses in fields. And some of the horses get quite inquisitive if you're accompanied by a dog. And that there can be a confrontation there, even if the dog's on a lead. The horse lashes out with its hoof. The consequences can be very unfortunate. So that's the main risk that I've encountered on our footpath network locally.
Yeah, I think we had when I first started, we had a couple of incidents of aggressive horses at the north end of the county. These things were quickly resolved because they, as the like Dawn and the other access officers, they know the people and everything else. A quick word in the rear and things are resolved and stuff. So there is a full filter system, and usually the access officers are brilliant. They've been, some of them have been doing it 30 odd years, but all of them have got a good round sort of solid knowledge of the area, who to speak to and what to do. So even though in the department tree, as it were. I'm on the definitive map side. I spend all my time, I quickly identified that I spend all my time with the access team, because basically they're the people on the ground, and that's where I want to be, dealing with stuff. So I'm actually sort of a definitive map and enforcement is one side, and the other side is your access and project officers. But I spend all my time with the likes of Dawn, Julian and Andrew and the rest of them, because they're the people on the ground and they can see what's going on, and they're the ones I can tap into about who to speak to.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, I think I should thank you both very much for your talks. I do feel reassured that our footpaths will be protected and that public access will be safeguarded. And I do hope that the Tykeswater Lane situation will be sorted out by everyone as soon as possible, because although I myself am too disabled to walk down there, I understand that the surface is so ploughed up that it could indeed be regarded as an obstruction. So I hope it does get sorted out very soon. Thank you both very much for giving up your valuable time and telling us all these interesting facts about your daily life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it is now time to draw this meeting to a close. So thank you all very much for joining us, and see you all this time next year.
Thank you.